Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Multispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour to be a part of the program. It's a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalai. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah Show kicks off this hour. Our Stump the Linux Chump episode. Probably the most excited I've ever been to do an episode. Essentially, I've been hanging out with the Destination Linux guys, and they have been a great influence on me. And when I say great influence on me, what I mean is they have caused me to dig deeper into Linux than I ever have before. As I was kind of thinking about it, I thought, man, I don't know if I've ever worked with a bunch of people that collectively have more knowledge in various different areas of Linux. They're just really smart guys. So I pitched an idea to them. I said, guys, would you be able to, all of you, take some time and join me for a special edition of the Ask Noah Show, and we can answer questions. So we've got people from all around the world. I'm going to bring them in here. We're going to go to our interactive mumble room. You too can join on mumble.jupiterbroadcasting.org. Michael, hey, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And Ryan's here as well.
Hello, everyone.
And Zeb, all the way from the other side of the pond.
Yep, hiya. Are you sure you got the right guys?
Well, it was the chumps that are going to try to answer questions about Linux, but none of us really know anything about Linux. Do I have the right guys?
Perfect.
Great.
That's perfect for me, yeah.
We figured it out. So you guys, we have all sorts of ways that you can interact with us. Obviously, we've got a brand new interactive chat room. It is hashtag or pound. What is the appropriate term inside of an IRC room?
Pound.
Is it? Okay.
It depends. People say hash too.
That's what I'm being told. And I said it one way, and then I got corrected, and I said it the other way, then I got corrected, and now it's like I've lost
There's
my...
like 30 different names for it. I mean, also crunch is another one.
Is it really?
Yeah, crunch bang is really just the hash symbol plus an exclamation point.
Crunch. Maybe I'll go with that just because nobody else is using it.
Yep, let's go crunch.
Well, anyway,
crunch Ask Noah Show.
Shift 3 Ask Noah Show in Freenode, and you can join our interactive...
If you have US in English keyboard.
Oh, no. Is it different?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's like the opposite corner of the keyboard for UK.
Number sign? That's pretty universal. Like, there's really nothing else that could not be a number sign, right?
Yeah, that works.
Number Ask Noah Show in Freenode. If you join us there, there's an interactive chat. You can ask us questions. We'll take them that way. And by the way, big announcement. Tomorrow, Wednesday night at 6 p.m., we're going to be celebrating our 100th edition of the Ask Noah Show. We're going to give away a $100 Amazon gift card, and all you have to do is exist in that chat room. So I would make sure to do that because tomorrow it could result in mega buku for you. But we'll take questions all the way around. We have a couple that have been sent in by email, so we'll read those and get the group's thought on that. I want to start with an email from Argentina. Augustin, I believe is how we pronounce this, writes in, says, many greetings from Argentina. Really like the show. The question is not that difficult, but having all of you here is the best way for me to get good ideas. I study at a small university in Argentina, about 2,000 students. We donated 3 to 4 computers, old and low specs. Think Core 2 Duo and Semperon with 512 megabytes, maybe a gigabyte, sometimes 2 gigabytes of RAM. We also have a couple of 320 gigabyte hard disks. Since our university loves to use the freedom-hating software, myself and another Linux enthusiasts have created a FOSS lab. And with maybe more computers and time, the question is, what do you recommend for a lightweight distro, perhaps maybe a headless server, so the students can SSH in? Love to hear your thoughts. So I guess we'll start with, I don't know how to do this. I suppose maybe the way to do this would be I'll just pick somebody to start with, and then we'll just kind of work around. So let's go to Ryan to start with.
Oh no, why'd you have to start with me? I'm going with Puppy Linux as a lightweight Linux. It's one of my favorite lightweight distributions out there. Otherwise, you could use Raspbian, which is what I use on a very old machine for my son.
Okay. Michael, your thoughts?
If we're talking about like just server-based stuff, I would go for the default Ubuntu because you're going to be you're going to be able to use the server and the desktop for a workstation as well, all combined in one distro.
Okay, and how about Zeb? What would you do for a lightweight distro?
Well, I would have to go with something like Antics, because I believe that you can run it from the command line as well as a GUI, so you get the best of both worlds.
I tell you what I would do. I think I'm gonna throw out, and maybe Michael, you'll tell me I'm crazy. I'm tempted to go with something like Ubuntu Mate, because you'll get that Ubuntu base, and yet the Mate desktop is actually fairly lightweight. And
yeah,
so,
but if he's talking about, like you said, server-based stuff though, like with a headless.
well, he asked about headless, but he said, but if you're thinking about it, if somebody gave me 3 to 4 computers and I was trying to set up a lab, I feel like I wouldn't do that at least I would have some of the computers have a user interface, because you'd want it to be a welcoming environment for those that maybe,
sure,
haven't used Linux before, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was basically saying Ubuntu for the server aspect headless part, but if they wanted a GUI on top of it, then Ubuntu Mate, Lubuntu, or even Kubuntu, because Kubuntu is actually not as heavy as people think it is.
Okay, here's a crazy thought. Who in here would go with either a tiling window manager or even something like XFCE, which is not terribly pretty, but it is undoubtedly lightweight and stable and reliable?
I mean, those are two of my favorites. I absolutely love i3, one of my favorite desktops to use, even on the most powerful hardware out there. So, I mean, that's a good bet out there for me. I would definitely go that route.
Chat room agrees with you. They're saying that tiling window managers are superior to every desktop environment ever. My question is, do we think that that's maybe not approachable for a new user?
I would actually absolutely say that it's not approachable for a new user.
It's really not. You'd have to take some time, especially for school. I'm kind of curious, though, on your Ubuntu Mate suggestion, because I'm on the Mate page, and it recommends a gigabyte of RAM, and they said these machines only have 250, I think, one, and 500 megabytes on the other. So, you going to run into issues there?
Maybe. I have run it on as low as 1 gigabyte of RAM and a Pentium 4. Actually, it's the machine. And you know what's funny? People always say, they're like, oh, well, it's some computer that you use once a day. No. It's the machine that actually sits by the back door of our shop. So when you walk into the back of the shop, oftentimes somebody will pull in, they'll just drop the tools or a ladder or something like that off, and they just need to close out their work order or open a work order or write some documentation, whatever. They just need a computer to do that. And so we wanted a computer that was going to sit by this back door. The problem is it's very close to a door that's constantly opening and closing, and so it's exposed to the elements quite often. And so we didn't want to spend any real money on it, so we just put a junker. And it's an old it's actually made by IBM, but it's an old IBM ThinkCenter, a Pentium 4 ThinkCenter. And I'll be darned if the stupid thing doesn't run Ubuntu Mate flawlessly. And it probably, maybe it has a gig, it might have 512 and a gig somewhere in there. But yeah, it's perfectly usable. We put an SSD in it to get some speed out of the thing, but everything caches in RAM, and then you don't really notice.
Yeah, that's why I went with Raspbian, because I think you can run Raspbian on as little as 128 megabytes of RAM. So that would be my suggestion on it, just because it's the most minimal, and you kind of get that whole Debian feel in there. You can do a lot with that, especially in a school. And like I said, my 5-year-old, that's what he has on his laptop, which is a much little older Dell with a gigabyte of RAM.
Well, the Raspbian is basically just a LXDE sitting on top of a Debian system for ARM. What you could do is do the LXDE Lubuntu 1804 and just do the minimal install for that, and you could pretty much get the same thing and just be on top of Ubuntu instead.
But I also think your XFCE offering was also good, because you could just leave it at the basic and it'd be very simple to use. And as they learned more, they could learn how to tweak it more. And once they got beyond XFCE, you could move them onto something else if they got a better machine.
Those are all.
I think the LXDE is a lot lighter though.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that LXD is one of those desktops that was designed with the idea of low specifications in mind. I think a lot of the people that work on them, they tend to use older hardware.
Yeah,
so,
if there was an open box option, like maybe a Debian base, like Antics has open box as an option, you could use that. So I think that the suggestion that Zeb had is pretty good for that. So if they wanted like the absolute minimum, like OpenBox is incredibly small.
Next question is, hello. I've heard you guys talk a lot about KDE. I've never heard it on specifics of exactly how you guys use it. I'm a longtime Xmonad user who started using KDE Plasma on one of my machines, and I'm having a little trouble developing a mental mode on how to best use KDE specifically to manage apps and Windows. I'm so used to Xmonad and i3 desktops. using Windows and Mode through backspace to be able to toggle between them. I'd love to hear how you guys manage desktops, activities, keep things organized, and what keyboard shortcuts you guys used. And then he lists a couple of minor issues he's had, getting applications to open on the screen that he's actually looking at, getting apps to stick to the right activities menu when he restarts the machine, having multiple windows open in one desktop and wanting to switch between them. So I thought that was an interesting question for us to kick around. I guess maybe we'll start with Michael, since he's the resident KDE guy.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I think it's a weird situation because like going from a tiling manager that's the only thing they're doing. It doesn't make any sense to go to a DE at that point because most DEs are floating based anyway. So you would have to be kind of adjusting your workflow heavily. So I think that was kind of like a weird approach. But I do think that the reason why I use Plasma because it has tiling functionality. And with the KWin window rules, you can accomplish the same amount of tiling that you can with just basic tiling window manager. So Xmonad, you could basically re-engineer Plasma to work like Xmonad if you wanted to.
I would also say that just adding on to your KDE window rules, that it would also allow you to, that would also fix this problem of, well, they're not showing up on the right window or the right thing when he's restarting. Like Telegram, I have KDE window rules set up so Telegram always opens to a compact window to the very far right of my display, and then all other windows that I open, when they're quote unquote maximized, it always lets Telegram visible on the far right, almost like Telegram is a dock of sorts.
Yeah, you can do that. I love the fact that you can do that, but you can also be more even specific. You can say, I only want this particular application to load on this particular this monitor, this desktop, this location, this size. You could even change like whether it has window decorations or like change the opacity by default and all kinds of stuff. So you can basically set it up however you want it to be. Like the reason why tiling window managers like Xmonad and i3 are great is because they kind of do it for you. They will just position it however the flow is meant to be as a tiling. Whereas Plasma is that you have to know where you want it to put it. But if you do, then it'll do everything exactly like you want it, and it will remember every single time you open the application.
Ryan, I don't know much about your experience with KDE. Are you much of a KDE guy?
It's growing on me because Michael won't stop talking about it. But it's a very good desktop environment, but I really don't think you're going to, if you're looking for that tiling experience, Michael's been saying this for years to me, all those features you talk about in i3 or in KDE, they are, but it's much more difficult to get to them. It takes far longer, in my opinion, to configure KDE that way. You have to do it over time, whereas i3, once you learn that configuration file, in about 10 minutes after a new install, I can have everything set up the way I want. Michael, maybe, because he's so experienced in KDE, could do that. I don't think you're going to get that same tiling experience. You can mimic it in KDE, and it's amazing that you can do that with it, but you're not going to get that same experience.
Zeb, how about you? Are you much of a KDE guy?
I've had a look at it and I really liked the Lubuntu 1804, but thankfully my workflow is very, very basic. I'll have at most 4, maybe 5 items open on the desk. So with my 2 monitors, I don't even need to use virtual desktops. So let's say I'll open up OBS, I'll open up Steam, I'll open up a game, I'll move the windows where I want to, and it takes me maybe 2 minutes. So to be able to go click, click, push, F7, Control KZ, or whatever else you do with i3, I just can't be bothered to learn all that. I'll move the window where I want it and then let it go. Job done.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I guess if I had a dynamic workflow, like if I was changing stuff all the time, that would work for me. The thing is, I find myself, I'm always in Telegram because I'm always communicating, whether it's for work, for the show, just hanging out with, Linux geeks and chatting about Linux and technical stuff. I'm always in Telegram doing that. If I'm working, chances are I'm doing my work either through a web browser, through a web config of sorts, or through the terminal. So my terminal is dropping down because I'm using Yowake or however you pronounce it. And my web browser is maximized of the screen real estate that isn't Telegram, and then Telegram's off to the right. And those are really the only 3 applications, and email, I guess. But those are really the only 3 applications I use. And so I'm able to accomplish all of that with KDE window rules. And then I know, it's almost like having multiple displays, I guess is kind of a way to look at it, because I allocate up my 13-inch 1080p display as if I had 3 different displays, one tiny little short one on the side that I use for Telegram, and then one big one, and then one that, I pull down and push up as I need it, which is my terminal.
I mean, I like the idea of having. I think there's the argument is that I don't really like the ability to do the tiling like automatic. I like the control. Like the idea of the tiling window manager is that it just does the tiling and you can easily move it wherever you want, but you're still going to have to move it and adjust every single time something is because of the dynamic function of it, which is nice in some ways, but I would prefer to have the applications exactly where I want them, the size, the position, everything. And the fact that you can do tiling, we're basically the biggest benefit of tiling is that you can disable the decorations of a window so you can have as much space as possible. But in Plasma, you can also do the same thing. So I can have all the benefits of it, but I can also have the additional control of exactly where I want it to be. So I have multiple monitors, but my approach is that every single desktop, virtual desktop that I have, is positioned in a certain workflow specific, like communication, like IRC, Mumble, things like that, are on one desktop, and then I have like all my editing and my graphics on different desktops, so I can actually guarantee that my stuff will be always on a certain section.
Eric, the IT guy, you had some thoughts on Plasma as well.
Yeah, I've been trying off of an XPS 12, which is basically Dell's competition for the Surface. So it's a 12-inch screen, it's 4K, and battery doesn't perform all that great. So I mean, one of the first things that would be nice is if I could set a rule that if I'm on battery, be 1080p, but if I'm on power, then 4K. But my experience with Plasma was nice. I liked it, but it's just not quite there on a lot of the devices that I'm on. The 4K support was I had to fight with it to get the scaling close to what I felt like it should be. But the biggest thing is I've actually started using the touchscreen of my XPS 12 quite a bit. I mean, even just for basic web navigation. So going to Plasma on my XPS 12 didn't really render much of a useful touch interface.
What would you say is the best experience you've had for the 4K on that laptop?
This has only seen Plasma and GNOME under Fedora, so I haven't really tested it out as much as I'd like to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for sharing. I appreciate it. I just shut my web browser. Thanks for sharing. So there was an article that came out today that kind of piqued my interest. Fedora is celebrating 15 years. Now, I am a huge Fedora fan, have been a huge Red Hat fan. I've used every version of Fedora since version 1. There is, we got a Fedora question and a Fedora upgrade question. I want to get to that in a little bit. I'm interested if, who the Fedora expert among the four of us is. Maybe it's me, but maybe somebody else, one of the other four of us have some experience. Architect, you had some thoughts.
I'm sorry, some thoughts on Fedora?
I don't know. You pinged me in the chat room, so I realized I had not gotten to you.
Oh, well, I mean, most of my thoughts have been around the Thelio that System 76 has unveiled recently, and open computing, like the open source desktop claims.
Okay, well, let's talk about that for a second. So, for those of you who aren't aware, System 76 is moving down a focus path of they are going to try to make open hardware. They're going to build that inside of the US, and they're going to deliver it to you, the Linux customer, from a group of people that really care and understand open source and Linux. And I can tell you, having been there myself, that it's not, they walk the talk, or they walk the walk, they don't just talk the talk. These people really care about open source, they really care about Linux, and they put their money where their mouth is. So when System 76 makes an announcement like this, when they make a promise, when they make a commitment, when they go down a path like this, I take it very seriously. At the same time, I own a small business, so I understand the hurdles that they are up against. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, Architect. What are your thoughts on this decision from System 76 and their all open hardware base, which they're calling Project Thelio?
Well, the idea is beautiful. We need more stuff like that in the world. My issue with it is that when Thelio dropped, it was basically an open source hardware case, still using AMD and Intel processors, although it is nice that they finally have AMD options. I mean, it's better than the NVIDIA stuff that just absolutely trashes your choice of operating system that you can use. But none of it is open. It's slightly more open than, say, buying from Dell or from HP, but the open hardware computer and open hardware desktop is available today and could have been Thelio too, with the likes of Sci5 and Raptor CS and their Talos and Hi5 Unleashed options, respectively. I mean,
aren't those limited in hardware though, and limited in like functionality?
No more so than any normal computer. I mean, the biggest issue right now is just getting things properly optimized for Power 9 and RISC-V. They can both run full Debian. They are both capable of virtualization, all your usual desktop workloads. The RISC-V
there's going to be some binary blob issues then, because there's going to be some things that they're like looking to support that they can't support because of the RISC-V architecture not supporting it yet.
For your GPU, maybe, but not for actually booting the CPU, which is an absolute necessity on both Intel and AMD boards and even some ARM boards. Power 9 is capable of driving the full desktop experience completely blobless.
I think I appreciate what System 76 is trying to do, because they're trying to do a gradual stance of they're trying to do the open source thing, but they're not going for the like outright right now. This is completely open, regardless of how many negatives come from that.
And I don't think they can. I don't think that's practical.
Right, because like they're doing the daughter board versus motherboard thing. So there are the pieces that are not open are being removed from the main motherboard, so that you can use just the open source stuff if you want to, but also have the additional benefit of the proprietary stuff if you wanted to use those as well. So it's a nice stage, like gradual stage process.
I would like to get System 76 on here. I'm sorry, go ahead, Red.
That's actually completely possible, but the messaging around this was to bring open source computing further than it has ever been. This is in no way meeting that claim. They have been beaten to the punch in literally every arena in which their marketing material has.
But you're arguing that the fact that the RISC-V and other things are beating them to the punch, but those particular architectures can't do a lot of things that this one can. So is it really beating them to the punch?
That AMD 64 can. There is no limitation other than getting your compiler to build properly optimized binaries. So things are a bit slower, but I mean, IBM's been working with NVIDIA for ages now on their power architecture for NVLink stuff, and AMD's got the open source stack. So I mean, it is possible to have a completely open source hardware and software desktop today.
Yeah, I guess here's, and Eric says this in the chat room, kind of sums up my thoughts on it, is I think we need to give credit where credit's due, and I think that we need to, maybe we take this and we iterate on it, but I think the other companies that have done similar things, I question if they have the market presence that System 76 has, and so if this will not make a bigger deal, even if that is not fair, if it will be a bigger deal because a company like System 76 is doing it. Hey guys, are you cool taking a phone call that we haven't screened? We have no idea what they're going to ask, and they might stump us and make us all look like a bunch of idiots.
Bring it.
1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. You're on Stump the Linux Chumps. What's on your mind?
Hey, so I manage a team of about 9 system and network administrators, and one of my goals has been to replace as many Windows systems in our data center as possible with Linux systems. And we're up to about 35 Ubuntu and CentOS boxes. It's kind of a mix. But one thing I'm struggling with right now is authentication. So because I guess historically we've been a Windows shop, actually we're a school district, so we have a ton of Windows workstations and clients, lots of proprietary software. We're slowly getting away from Windows on the desktop, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime super soon. Maybe within 5 years we can get there. I'm working on it slowly. But in the meantime, our AD infrastructure isn't going away. So currently, with all of our Linux VMs, we've got just a single username and password that's shared by our team of, well, I guess it's one team of 5 and another team of 4 that do various things. I'd like to integrate them and join them to AD, and I would like to issue YubiKeys to all of my team members. Does anyone know of a good way to manage the SSH key portion when you're using Active Directory authentication on Linux?
How about you guys? I don't want to step on anybody. Anybody else have some ideas? I've got some ideas I'll share.
I'd say go ahead and do that.
Go for it, because I'm stumped. Yeah.
So I would break this problem up into a couple. I would combine a couple of different technologies to form a singular solution. So obviously, there's not going to be a lot of development in building a solution that ties to Active Directory with SSH, because the people that are running Active Directory don't really use SSH, right? They're two. I mean, they're two different technologies for two different platforms. But what you can do is you could use a central directory service that is capable of authenticating into Windows, but has the ability to tie into other services. And what I'm referring to, of course, is the Free IPA project. And so I'm not sure. Have you heard of Free IPA?
I've heard of it. Haven't looked into it too much.
So essentially, what Free IPA is a drop-in replacement for Active Directory. It's a combination of Kerberos and DNS, and so essentially, which is essentially really what Active Directory is essentially a component of a mixture of LDAP to handle the directory structure, and then obviously that ties into all the group policy and stuff like that. So Kerberos will allow you to do the authentication and set up all of the policies and identities and stuff like that. Now, where I say why I think this might work very well for your particular question is because not only will it tie into Microsoft Active Directory, but it also is specifically designed to work natively on Linux. And they have tie-ins to all of the Linux I shouldn't say all, but many of the Linux subsystems. And so I'll bet you, and I can't say this definitively because I've not actually tried it, but I will bet you there is a way to tie a SSH key assign an SSH, a given SSH key to a given identity. And of course, YubiKey will take you the rest of the way there, because you would essentially assign a YubiKey to a user. You would put that YubiKey's SSH public key into their user in the Free IPA directory system, and then from there on out, that user is tied to that YubiKey. You ever fire that user, you simply go ask them for the YubiKey back, pull that public key, and put it into whoever the next guy you hire, and Bob's your uncle. You're in business.
Okay, that sounds like it should work pretty well. Do you notice Free IPA have the ability to, I guess, proxy authentications to Active Directory, or would it need to be a complete replacement? I
believe it does. I'm just looking here under their documentation. I believe it does have the ability to integrate in with Active Directory. And the reason I say that is because when they first were coming up with this, they were going into existing Windows environments. And I strongly suspect that they don't specify on their site, but I know the lead developer. I can poke him and find out for you. But I strongly suspect that they're not going to walk into businesses and say, "Hey, we're going to take all of your stuff out of production and we're going to replace it with this thing." I strongly guess that they probably have a better way around that.
Okay, appreciate your help, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for the call. 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. The email live at AskNoahShow.com. So our next question is regarding Fedora. It says, love the show. Have a question for you guys on the management of Fedora updates. I've been using Fedora 28 for some time and have grown to really appreciate it. I tried upgrading to Fedora 29 on the stable release, and although it worked, there were some things that were off in software updates that would appear to freeze during the reboot process, showing 97% and then halting for hours. This happened on a new install also. I know this will be fixed in some time, but as a newcomer and remembering it was a favorite of yours for some time, I was hoping that you could give me some advice and a rough estimate on how long I should wait between upgrades, or whether or not it would work by simply upgrading or starting fresh each time. And then he goes on to say that he's tried Clonezilla, a couple of other things. So Zeb, I'll start with you. What is your interest or experience with Fedora? Have you used it? And if so, have you had an easy time upgrading?
Well, I'm one of those people who doesn't go the upgrade route. I've been using Fedora on and off since 26. And I tend to install brand new when a distro comes along. Again, purely because I have a very simplistic a use requirement. I've just got maybe half a dozen apps that I need to get working. So I'm not worried about getting my 32 applications set up with all their configuration files and complicated setup. So I've never gone down the upgrade route, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's, I guess, kind of been my way as a Fedora user of everything since Fedora 1. I don't know that I've done a lot of upgrades. I usually embrace the opportunity to nuke and pave my system. I can clear it all of the junk and get back to all of the stuff I was testing and get rid of all that and go back to the stuff I want to use. Michael, I would guess that you're not much of a Fedora guy.
I'm a Fedora KDE guy.
Are you really?
But as far, yeah, I mean, I like Fedora KDE, but it's not my main distro, but I have used it many times, and I've done some upgrades, and starting from 27, so 27, 28, the upgrade were good, but I haven't actually done the 28 to 29 yet, so I don't know for that one. But there used to be a problem that I experienced like almost every time for the first, like probably from 20 to 26, like there were some issues of upgrading I had to like compensate for. But 26, 27 was and 26, 27, 27, 28 were fine.
Ryan, have you done much with Fedora?
I have. I actually am more of a recent convert to Fedora. I like Fedora a lot. I started on Fedora 28. I had tried to use it early about 2 years ago. I've only been in Linux for 2 years. Tried to use it 2 years ago and had NVIDIA and just didn't have enough knowledge back then to kind of work around some of the issues there. But I am using it now, and I did upgrade from 28 to 29. My experience with Fedora is it's generally better to upgrade via the command line versus trying to do it through the GUI. I tend to have issues with the upgrades with the GUI, plus at times it does that kind of reboot into the screen where it gives you the percent counter and everything else that goes on that I'm not a huge fan of personally. I just like to do all the updates via the command line and things run very smooth.
I have to now. Chat room points out that Chris has had experience, a pleasant experience, I might add, upgrading, and has gone that route. And so I believe, if I remember right, he has a Fedora server that he's been using and playing with for a while, and he's not had any issues continuing to upgrade. So my advice to you, sir, is I would say yes, go ahead and do the upgrades, but back up first and foremost, which you should always be doing. And understand that as a Fedora user, I really embrace the opportunity to kind of just nuke and pave. That's kind of what I do. I mean, am I weird on that? Is there just aside from the Fedora question, do the three of you, do you always upgrade your system, or are you anal retentive? Like Zeb said that he doesn't have any sacred magic scripts or anything like that he doesn't know how they got there, and so he's afraid to blow them away. He just kind of rebuilds his system. How about the rest of you guys? What are you doing?
Well, it depends on the system. Basically, if it's something I've used, like the primary, that one I will take a lot longer to upgrade. Right now, I'm actually been on KDE Neon, still on 1604. I haven't done the upgrade yet because I still get the security updates from Ubuntu and all that. So I'm not going to get the next version of Plasma, but I need to upgrade it as soon as possible. But it's going to be, it's a lot to do because I've had this for like 2.5 years. So I have to, the very first time that there's ever been an upgrade process for them, I'm a little wary about that. But overall, I think if depending on what you're using, if you're using an Ubuntu flavor, like an official flavor, the upgrade processes are like almost guaranteed perfectly fine. You still should always have a backup and everything before you do anything at all. Make a backup. But with that said, I think Ubuntu has the most seamless experience. But I also would like to say that Fedora is probably a different audience. Like they're targeting different people. Because they're more of an enthusiast distro, so they're not bleeding edge, but they're like cutting edge, I guess, where they're still doing a lot of stuff quickly, just not as quick as some distros. So I think that they are focusing more on the people who are enthusiasts.
Nunix, you said you had some thoughts?
Yeah. Now, disclaimer: I'm not much of a Fedora person, or even necessarily much of a Linux person. But this is a perfect reason to break out your installation into as many separate file systems as makes sense. But at least have a separate home, maybe a separate boot. That way, when you do upgrade, you don't have these sort of issues where you're risking losing an awful lot of information because you have that separate file system that is left untouched during the process. And that's worked out fantastically for me on my Dragonfly BSD, hardened BSD, FreeBSD systems where, I also have the benefit of boot environments with the file systems, but nothing has ever really made those a necessity either due to having everything separated out.
Yeah, I go back and forth with that, to be honest with you, because the thing is, I never can really plan on day one of my install of how much hard drive space I'm going to need down the road, right? So what I always end up doing is I end up partitioning my hard drive out that way. And then I realize, oh, actually I've installed more programs than I've stored data, or I've installed more data than I installed programs, and I didn't know either of those two things when I started. That's the kind of issue I run into. By the way, I see Brent is up in the quiet listening. Brent, you're welcome to join us. We're having a discussion. And if Chris rolls in here, or if you guys need your on-air channel back, I don't know how early you guys start the pre-show for Linux Unplugged, but we can always jump down into the Ask Noah show group and continue on. So just saying hi and understand that we're trying to be cognizant of that. I'm trying to keep half of an eye on that. Don't see Chris or Wes in here yet, so I'm guessing they haven't started yet. But if that comes to it, just let us know and we'll jump down. Again, you too can add your voice to the conversation. 1-855-450-NOAH is 855-450-6624. The email live at asknoahshow.com. Join us in our interactive mumble room or our brand new spanky chat room, and that is at Shift 3 Ask Noah Show. Free note, I'm just gonna embrace that number sign. Like I'm just gonna change it every time. It's gonna be pound one time, it's gonna be hashtag another time, it's gonna be Shift 3. I'm find out what it is. Zeb, what is it on your keyboard? You're from across the pond. What do you have? How do you get a number sign?
I get the number sign because it's the very first key next to the enter key on the right hand side of the keyboard. You're talking about Shift 3, that gives the UK pound sign. So You're going to get some interesting people joining from the UK.
I wonder if I say Slack. Isn't the Slack logo a hashtag? I can.
Yeah, Slack logo is also a hashtag. Yeah.
Slack Ask Noah Show in Freenode. However you want to get there, that's fine with me.
That'd be confusing a little bit.
Another user writes in, says, "Hey guys, love the show. I'm a Linux Mint user and I've recently downloaded Lubuntu 18.10 to give it a try. It looks great and everything and works well from the live disk, except one thing. The Connect to Server option in the Go-To menu in the File Manager does not offer a Windows Share option, which is what I need. In comparison, I tested the live disk of Linux Mint 19 and Ubuntu Mate 1804 for the same issue, and the Windows Share option is available in both. Do I need to install Samba or another utility to add the option in the File Manager? I have faced this dilemma many times over with a number of distros and would appreciate your help." So I guess let's take this one to Ryan. You're kind of a desktop Linux guy. I would imagine you've had some experience connecting to a couple Windows shares back in your day.
Yeah, I have nuked all Windows out of my life, so probably not the best. But back in the day when I did it, it seems like adding in the SMBFS and Samba was the way to get those shares working. But I may not have understood the question correctly, but that's the route I understood.
Okay.
Setting up Samba, and also there's some in order to have Samba working with some certain file systems that you want to have it work through, you might have to install some Fuse packages like NTFS Fuse and stuff like that.
That's been my experience. I guess I'm kind of surprised. Here's the thing. I can't give him too much crap because he's not here to defend himself. But the release manager for Lubuntu, I kind of have my thumb over him because he works for me. So I might go put some pressure on him, go over and lean on his desk and say, "Hey, buddy, if Samba is included in the next release of Lubuntu, someone's getting a pink slip." I wonder how well that would go over. But yeah, that would be my suggestion is check out to see if the Samba package is installed there. And then I would also ask, is Lubuntu really the best is Lubuntu really a good distro choice?
It depends. The 1804 one is a solid option because it's like the LTS version, but the 1810 might not be because the LXQt is in the very early stages of the transition. So while it's a very good implementation of LXQt, probably one of the better ones, it's still in like a development period and a transition phase, so there's going to be bugs. So if you want like a completely seamless experience, it might not be the best choice for that.
I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say, much as I love Simon, much as I love Lubuntu, that I'm not sure that's the distro I would start with. It's a pared down distro, so by the very nature of it being lightweight and pared down, it obviously doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, and which means it doesn't hold your hand very much. It means you kind of have to know what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, if you're talking about the absolute, like the first time you ever used Linux and that situation, I would say probably Kubuntu 1804, 1810 is a great option. You could also say that once you, like the reason why I'm saying that is because, well, Ubuntu with GNOME is a good option too if someone doesn't want anything that looks remotely like what they're used to if they're a Windows user. But with Kubuntu, you get the experience of, you know, familiarity with using the Windows layout and the traditional like paradigm, as well as some of the functionality of Kubuntu is kind of like set for them. But if they want something that's very different, then Ubuntu GNOME is a good option there too. I just think the rest of them have things where you have to change a significant amount, so that if you're not prepared for that, that might be a, you know, like a barrier for them.
You know, coming from Mint, though, that's kind of a strange jump going from Mint. I don't know the desktop they chose there, but let's assume it's Cinnamon all the way to Lubuntu. It's a very different experience to nose point. Maybe something more like an Ubuntu Mate would be a better choice there.
And with the Ubuntu Mate welcome screen, and again, like Ubuntu Mate does a couple of those rough edges, they take them off, right? So for example, sure, it's not going to come with an application that will launch an application when you hit the super key, which a lot of people I think are becoming accustomed, both Spotlight on the Mac, the Windows 10 interface, of course, GNOME, KDE, all of these, that's how you're launching these applications. Back in the Unity days, that's what you were doing. And but Ubuntu Mate, Wimpy, takes the time to install the application that you need to make that functionality work. And so those are that's what I mean. I think there's a lot of polish in some of these other distributions that are very friendly to newbies.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, especially it depends on like right now. Like I think Lubuntu will be a great option when the next LTS comes around with the 2004, because it'll have LXQt and they'll have plenty of time to actually make that a polished offering. But I think right now, since they're early in that stage and LXDE itself is very like bare bones type approach, I think that it's a good point to say that Lubuntu might not be the best option for this right now. And Ubuntu Mate, Ubuntu Budgie, Kubuntu, and maybe even Xubuntu, because they have a lot of modifications that improve XFCE, could be good options for them.
I also see that CM is looking for attention by posting literally hashes inside of the chat room. CM, am I allowed to share your I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say it. Your journey with Linux and where your destination of Linux was? I'm stealing a little bit of branding there.
Yeah, sure. Well, I first encountered Linux by choosing a live CD which is Knoppix. I don't know it's alive anymore. I don't know, but from there I went to Fedora Core 1, and I'm on Fedora ever since.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. We got it. Go ahead.
And it has a nice epilogue right now, because after 15 years being a Linux enthusiast, I have a Linux job now.
Oh, fantastic!
Nice.
That's fantastic.
Congratulations.
What do you do on Linux?
Well, I am a general sysadmin and network guy.
I like it. Good for you, man. You're knocking it out. I love that. This is not a question, but people are writing in, so I'm going to read it because it's very complimentary. It says, I enjoyed episode 92, and I also enjoy the recent couple episodes of Destination Linux and you as a guest host on the podcast. I like both the dial-in and the special formats. I hope that Ubi ports to a wide variety of devices, including mid-range phones. I run Linux on older machines. Now that is 2 and 64-bit tablets are a few years along. I hope to pick up a used one on eBay and make a proper Linux tablet out of it. Everybody is great except for Michael. Keep up the good work.
Wow. I love that. That is the best note ever.
I may have made up that last part, but he does say keep up the good work.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
The Ryan syndrome must be catching, because Ryan keeps adding his name to emails.
That's false news. Fake news, everyone.
That's the hashtag fake news. # fake news. Shift 3. Oh, by the way,
Slack
Crunch.
logo.
you know what I learned? So I learned this in the chat room while I was on air. So TIL, when they said the British pound, I didn't realize that they meant like the British pound is in like the money symbol. Yeah. So that's not going to work. We can't do that because I don't think you'll get there inside of the IRC if you British pound Ask Noah Show. It has to be American pound Ask Noah Show. # Ask Noah Show. # Ask Noah Show. Shift 3 Ask Noah Show if you're in the US. Or Slack Ask Noah Show. One of those.
Just make a
Those
list
Yeah,
and go
it's
through them
confusing
all.
having to weigh money.
Say again. Somebody asked something.
Sorry, it's confusing having to weigh money like that in pounds.
I don't think that's what that means. Here's another. Oh my goodness. People are sending in questions right and left, and while I appreciate it, y'all remember I have to read these on the air. So this comes to us from New Zealand. Quick request. I'm a huge fan of owning technology. I'm active in amateur radio, and I'm a robotics mentor. Given all the news lately about social media platforms delisting accounts in their sole discretion, I'm interested in a Linux FOSS decentralized alternative to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Google, Apple, or Microsoft. As a libertarian, I worry about censorship and restrictions on freedoms of speech, assembly, and associations. I'm also worried about a not so distant future where ISPs and payment processors won't or accept certain payments from certain companies that run outside of mainstream. Now there is time to building a popularization on our new format, run by the people for the people, unstoppable. So what are your thoughts, guys? Decentralized platforms for payments, decentralized platforms for communication, all those kinds of things.
I think decentralized is a great and noble goal that also has its own flaws that make it not practical. So, like, if you say, for example, Mastodon, Mastodon's fantastic, especially the Linux Rocks.online instance. That's a good option. However, there are also about 500 other instances that are not all interconnected. And even when they are interconnected, you kind of don't know where they're coming from or which handle and which instance one of the particular handles that you're talking to is on. So you could be, messaging someone that you think is the right person, but they're different because they're on a different instance. So each platform has their own negative, because like while the Federation aspects is cool, it kind of makes stuff complicated for a large majority of people.
Yeah, this is a really difficult question because Mastodon, I think, is probably one of the best examples when he asked for a replacement for Twitter. But, and I think it does a good job, but you're also going to have to get your friends and other people to go over there. The Linux community supports Mastodon pretty well in mass, so I think it's a good alternative. When you're looking at an alternative to YouTube is where you start really becoming an issue. Everybody wants an alternative to YouTube, but it's just become such a foundation that it's almost impossible to replace. There are alternatives we've all looked into, like PeerTube and other things that use peer-to-peer BitTorrenting and things like that to attempt to decentralize, but ultimately, if nobody's there to watch your videos when you upload to those places, then what's the point? So
where are
that's
the eyeballs?
The most difficult thing. Exactly.
Yeah. So Charlie Brown, and I have to say this, just because I just have to say this, man. You have been extraordinarily vocal. And when I say extraordinarily vocal, I mean a comment on literally every video I think we've ever posted on every platform we've ever posted it on. So it comes as no surprise that you have something to add to this conversation.
G'day, thanks. Yeah, Australia and New Zealand are losing their democracy. They use like free speech, and it's getting very popular in both countries, along with the UK, to find platforms that you can openly talk about stuff without getting censored. So I do have a list of options for everyone to check out. For email, I recommend Proton Mail or Tunala, I think is how you say. Facebook alternative is Minds and Me Too. Twitter alternative is Gab AI, and they've just gone through some dramas getting deplatformed in the last week, but they are back up on the internet. BitChute is my recommendation for a YouTube alt. Wire is my recommendation for a Skype alt, and PeerTube is a good solution to self-host your stuff if you want to go down that route as well, along with using OpenStreetMap instead of Google's Maps, SearchX, Me, or DuckDuckGo instead of Google Search. And I personally would recommend F-Droid over the Android Google Store as well.
Now, with the Gab thing, let's dive into that for just a second. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Again, definitely losing our democracy here. Like, I'm living in New Zealand. Like, I was born here, and now they're doing device searches at customs, which is something they didn't do 5 years ago.
Right? Yeah.
Yep, that's also passed in Queensland, and there's news that now they've got some sort of surveillance system in New South Wales, which is in Australia, that it links up to your motor identity, your driver's license, and the cameras will monitor everything you do back to your driver's license.
So quick reset. Quick reset. Hold on. Real quickly. I just want to reset this conversation before we go on. So what these guys are referring to, it's a really important piece of legislation that has passed in other countries. They're nicknaming it somewhat comically the electronic strip search, and the idea is that they can fine you excessively or retain possession of your device if you don't permit the government to decrypt these devices at the border. And so that's what they're talking about. I just want to make that clear before we go on. That's what you're referring to, guy from New Zealand.
Yes.
Okay, so now you can go into your point.
Too.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of countries that have done that. So now you can continue the discussion. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Departments and spying agencies, they're all trying to tie back into the guise of like anti-terrorism, but they're piggybacking off the PRISM system, I think it is.
Yeah, possibly. I want
PRISM, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, PRISM. Yes.
Yeah, the government program started in the U.S. that was leaked by Edward Snowden. So I want to dig into that Gab AI thing for just a second if we can. Charlie, you've probably been following this a little bit more than I have. Have they weathered the storm? Have they come out on the other side as a platform that says, hey, we're not shutting down and we're not going to censor our content?
Yeah, so what happened last week is they got deplatformed as fast as what happened to Alex Jones and several other people. Like literally all in one day, they just got deplatformed by. Hang on, I've got a list. So they got removed from Pusher, which was an API company, Medium, Shopify, GoDaddy, PayPal.
The specifics probably aren't, but the point is that they've weathered the storm. They've come out on the other side.
Yeah. So they found other solutions. There was one ISP that came out and said, "Yes, we're going to support actual free speech for everyone." And they went on the record on their blog of saying we're supporting Gab.
Sure.
So they found another that, and they said, even if we have to reinvent from the bare bone scratch, like every technology we need, we are. They recently got $4 million in
Sure.
crowdfunding and like raising, so they've got the money.
That's great, and I'm glad they were able to. I'm glad they were able to move through, and it's not that I don't want to have the discussion about the free speech and the platform and all of that. I think that's great. I do think that free speech is important. I think that having platforms to have free speech are important. But I don't want to get too bogged down in the social parts of this, if only because right here in the U.S. we're in the middle of elections and tensions are hot, and tonight especially there's a lot of people that are looking for an excuse to get upset about something. And the other thing is that we've got another question that came in.
How dare you?
It says, "Good afternoon, all. I managed to add a couple hard drives in my elementary desktop a few days ago, and first mounting the drives in the file manager, then editing FSTab. Now the drives auto-mount. I'd like to do the same in an MX17 desktop, but those drives don't even show up in the file manager. How do I mount those drives so FSTab can be edited? Not a stumper for you, but I'm super deep enough into Linux, and I don't have those yet." Well, I have to tell you, that is the sort of hard-hitting, critical question we're looking for here on the Ask Noah Show, Stump the Chumps episode. So let's start with this. Why do you think those drives aren't showing up in the file manager? I guess we'll start with let's go to Ryan.
I'm a little stumped on that, because if he's editing that, I mean, I don't see why you couldn't do the exact same thing in MX17, which, if I'm not mistaken, defaults to XFCE, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm not sure why they wouldn't show up there the same as they would any other. What might be missing there? Maybe Michael knows.
I don't know, but there's another benefit. I don't know why that this particular issue is happening, but the there's always an extra, like the open source community is all about, helping each other and things like that. So even though we might not have the answer, we do know one of the people who works at MX, and we can get the answer for you.
Look at that. That's community working at its full potential. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead.
May I jump in here?
Yeah, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Zeb. Yeah, go ahead.
I had these kind of problems when editing fstop. It depends on the file system and the device you want to plug, because in fstop the protocols have changed, and so I had an fstop entry, and all of a sudden after an upgrade I was no longer able to connect to that one, and that was because Ubuntu changed the protocol, and I had to use an old protocol. In fact, I had to change the line. In fact, and then it worked.
It also depends if it's like an NTFS or not, because if you don't have the fuse packages and things like that to make it work, it wouldn't be able to mount them anyway.
Yeah, but they should be installed by default, right?
Yeah,
they
are.
Not usually, but
yeah, no.
nice,
in MX17, I've got probably 7 or 8 external USB drives, and they're all NTFS from my old Windows days. There is actually an inbuilt Debian GUI manager that you can use, and sometimes it gets confused with the GNOME disks. It's called Disk Manager, and if you open up Disk Manager, you can implicitly tell it whether you want it to, connect when you first boot. You can also tell it to use the NTFS driver rather than leaving it on auto. So once he's got it set up and working correctly in there, he should then be able to go and have a look at FSTab and see what it's done.
That is also what the chat room is echoing. So I would advise you to check, to look into what file system you're having. Of course, the other thing you could do, and I mean, nobody's going to like this answer, but it's what I would do from a troubleshooting perspective. Get the drives connected however you have to get the drives connected, get the data off of them, and try and format from scratch and see if those drives show up inside of your next distro. And like I said, it's not a great answer, but it's a troubleshooting step. Hey, with just a couple minutes left, go ahead.
I was just going to say, before you have to go through trying to reformat, just pop open a terminal and see if they have entries using the command lsblk.
Yeah.
That'll list your block devices and give you all the information you need to get FSTab entries.
Well,
created.
Yeah, but if they're not showing up in the file manager, it seems like they may not be mounting, though, right?
Well, that doesn't matter. If the block device is visible to the system, then you can use a command like fstype to determine if the file system type is even known. But I mean, it's possible they're not even formatted, and you can get whatever information is available by using lsblk or blkid to get that block device info and create a relevant FSTab entry.
I just question why, obviously the LS block will show you a device that's physically connected to the motherboard, but it doesn't really know anything about the device other than, well, it'll tell you the capacity of the device. But if the device was mountable, it's strange that the file manager wouldn't show them up, or that another utility like, GNOME disk utility or something, whatever the default disk utility is in MX17, wouldn't see those drives. You wouldn't be able to mount them.
Yeah, especially since the other distro they said did support it.
With just a couple minutes back,
that comes down to like your UDEV rules.
With just a couple minutes left, I just want to wrap up real quick. Michael, where can people find you throughout the week?
You can find me at tuxdigital.com as well as destinationlinux.org.
And Zeb?
Yep, same thing. You can find me in the Telegram group of destinationlinux.org.
And how about Ryan?
DasGeekCommunity.com or the DasGeek YouTube channel or Destination Linux.
Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you on the first Stump the Chumps. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Let's do it.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, real quickly, coming up right now, Linux Unplugged, 6 p.m. tonight, Ask Noah Show with Eric Dubois from Arco Linux, election coverage, 8 p.m., electioncoverage.vote, and finally, the Ask Noah 100 episode, celebration episode. That's tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central, AskNoahShow.com. We'd also invite you to come out and hang with us at the event venue, which is at the Tamarack Tap Room in Woodbury, Minnesota. Make sure to download the latest episode at podcast.asknoahshow.com. We've got tons of new episodes out, tons of articles and materials that are referenced inside of the show. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at AskNoahShow. The Ask Noah Show will continue 6 p.m. tonight, everybody. Huge thanks to Vox Telesis for providing our phone system, Ben, our producer, Sarah, our call screener. Head over to AskNoahShow.com for content 24/7. We'll see you tonight.